Shalom and welcome to another very special edition of Parsha Talk. I'm Rabbi Elliot Malamet in Highland Park, New Jersey, the Highland Park Conservative Temple Congregation Anshe Amen, and joining me, my good friends Rabbi Barry Chesler, Solomon Schechter Day School of Long Island, Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanowski, Anshe Chesed, New York City. We are in the middle of Sukkot. It's Chol HaMoed Sukkot. We were recording this a couple of days before Hoshana Rabbah and Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah. This is a very full time. It's the crescendo of the entire month of Tishrei, Chagei Tishrei, as they say in Israel. We're just going to pull out holidays at random, and I'm going to ask my colleagues to reflect on key moments, emotional moments, important moments, favorite moments. We'll talk about Hoshana Rabbah, Barry Chesler. Hoshana Rabbah, favorite moment, key moment, emotional moment. What speaks to you on Hoshana Rabbah?
So I think I like Hoshana Rabbah a lot, especially when one does the full nusach. So we have the special Pesukei Dezirma which we use for Shabbat and Yom Tov, and then we have a Torah reading Hallel. We have Musaf to the High Holiday nusach, and it's an attempt to weave everything together. For the rabbis, this was Yom Adin, the last Day of Judgment. So we were written in the book of life, one hopes on Rosh Hashanah, sealed on Yom Kippur. And this is the last gasp when the judgment is finally made in stone, so to speak. And it's a powerful moment, because then, especially following the rabbis, we observe Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah, which is kind of a private moment with God. It's an attempt to hold on to the God of the high holidays while preparing us for the joy of Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah.
Interesting. Rabbi Kalmanowski.
Man, I love Hoshana Rabbah, and admittedly, what I love about it is maybe a little bit hard to translate, but the poems that are recited, it's Hoshana Rabbah is the great Hoshana. Each of the days of Sukkot, we've had circled the sanctuary and recited one poem, and with a little bit before and a little bit after. But on the Hoshana Rabbah, there are 7 poems, and they're intensely messianically inflected. I think messianism in real life is not great. I think it tends to drive people insane and make them do stupid things. But the climax of these poems is this kol mevaser, mevaser miomer. The voice proclaims, and here's what it says, and the poem is rich with messianic imagery. Like all of this suffering, done. All of this exile done, and the world, death swallowed up forever. The resurrection of the dead is here. The Mashiach is here, and that chant of Kol Mevaser Mevaser V'Omer. I'll just give you a couple of them. Simi Adam Mesech Mishkenotayich Kabli Banayich Uvnotayich. Stretch your tent as far as Damascus. Bring in all your sons and daughters. Il Zicha Batzelat HaSharon Ki Kamu Yishenei Chavron. Rejoice, you rose of Sharon, those sleeping in Hebron, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, and Leah, they've come back to life. Tzemach, ish tzemach shmo. Tzemach hu ish tzemach shmo, hu David be'atzmo. The Mashiach, who's known as the flourishing plant, his name is flourishing. This is none other than David himself. And we're in the synagogue and we're chanting, Mevaser v'omer, and then we whack, 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 whack the willow branches, and the willow branches, and we have a newish super. He was here at the synagogue last Hoshana Rabbah, but I don't think he remembers the Jewish holiday cycle. So I was like, okay, Stephen, I got to tell you, we got to have a little more time cleaning up the sanctuary after Friday morning services, because it's going to be littered with vegetable matter.
Yeah. So I agree. I think these are critical pinnacle moments, and the sense that everything kind of is in disarray, that everything is, like they say in basketball, we leave it all on the court, we leave it all in the bima, we leave it all in the sanctuary. That's quite true. We do leave it all. In fact, there is this custom, and I can't really pin it down, but at the end of the Hoshanot, to put the lulav, to take the branch and to put it in the aron, we do that. I've been doing that because I remember we used to do that at the seminary. I don't remember what the origins of that custom are, but I know that we collect the lulavim and we use the lulavim for burning chametz, so that there's a kind of connection between the end of one holiday and the beginning of another holiday. And I would just underscore the idea of those Hoshana. It's probably very difficult for someone who's never experienced it. In our communities, we tend not to have large turnouts on Hoshana Rabbah. It's a weekday morning. It's an early morning. The service goes quite a long time. We do get more people than usual in a daily minyan, but it can be quite a long service, and it hums along. And quite honestly, most of the Hoshanot are unintelligible to many people, except for maybe the repetition phrases, Mevaser v'omer Hoshana, etc., Elna Hoshana, all of those which have a certain power, incantatory power, with repetition and repetition, repetition. And I think the sense of repeating things gives its own, I don't want to say a trance-like power, but it's a catharsis. The whole moment is a catharsis. It's over. And I feel exhausted at the morning. And it's a good exhaustion. It may be, all of the emotion that has been pent up from the end of Yom Kippur, the sense that, whatever you didn't get to finish on Yom Kippur, now you can finish. I kind of have a little bit of envy for people who say, oh, we had such a wonderful Yom Kippur. We had such a satisfying Yom Kippur. I'm not sure exactly what they mean, other than maybe they sang a lot, it was musical, they davened very hard, they had that full experience, but that emotional, spiritual satisfaction emerges at the end of Hoshana Rabbah, I think. And
of course, it is true that most people don't. You have to know a little bit to get the poems, to get what the references is, which is why I always say to people, like Evan Shtia, well, this is all about Jerusalem, and each item in this alphabetical list is about Jerusalem, or each in Olani Choma, each one is about the people of Israel, and it's experienced through history, and I try to at least give people some sense of where it's going. But I really appreciate, because of there's primitivity to the ritual. We're getting in touch with our pagan side a little bit. We're holding the bouquet. We're shaking it. You give it rustle, and it makes noise like rain. And we're trying to awaken the rain. And I think it's amazing in a very intellectual religion like our own, that sometimes we have these ways of getting in touch with I don't mean this in a bad way, but I mean it actually in a good way, a less sophisticated format. And the poems, because the poems are, as you just said quite correctly, incantatory, da-dum, da-da-dum, 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 and with that dirgy little Hoshana chant, it sort of gives you a little bit of a hint of what a poem was written in the 7th century, perhaps, for an illiterate people, for an illiterate population. They weren't dumb, they weren't uneducated, but they didn't read squiggles. They didn't read marks on a piece of paper. They were just repeating. Yeah. And the power of that repetition, I think, is really okay, what did Kalir do that his poems are being recited after the man's been dead for 1,500 years or 1,300 years? He had that incantatory beat that people could connect to.
And they're on so many levels at the same time that you cannot underscore the sophistication of some of these, and the alliterative power, the illusory power, the metaphors, and all of the different poetic devices. They're just, it's such a rich array of beautiful poetry that is beyond the capabilities and literacy of most of us. Okay, we'll move to Shmini Atzeret now. Shmini Atzeret, emotional moments, Shmini Atzeret, and where do you go from there, Barry? Shmini Atzeret.
I guess Shmini Atzeret, what speaks to me is Geshem, the prayer for rain. In Israel, this is going to be close to the beginning of the rainy season, which, at least according to the rabbis, will begin in 2 weeks, on the 7th of Cheshvan. And this is a time to make the transition into the coming autumn and winter. So it's a transition even in the United States with the weather, and Shmini Atzeret is its own holiday. The rabbis stress that, and so it has its own kiddush, its own amidah, its own musaf, and it's like a last chance to relax in a yontif sort of a way and enjoy.
Jeremy.
Well, I was also going to say Geshem, and I was actually going to look for the text here in my Siddur, which I'm not turning it up right now. I love the religious style of saying Morid Hatal. Even though I'm an Ashkenazi guy, not necessarily a Hasidic background, I adopted saying Morid Hatal in the more Sephardic Nusach of Eretz Yisrael, of more the Hasidic style. I love Morid Hatal because it speaks to me of like a spiritual truth that even in the dry summer in the land of Israel, where there's never any rain, there's still some moisture to be precipitated out of the air, and you can always find tal, you can always find dew, even on a hot and otherwise unrainy day. So I love saying it through, Pesach to now. I find it a little bit sad to say goodbye to Morid Hatal and take on Geshem, to take on what, I'd like to find it in my
Here, I got it
but
up.
I can't find it right now.
Here, I'm holding it up in the screen.
Okay. Oh, thank you. What page is that?
It's in the I'm in the Koran, 851.
I'm also in the current.
Okay, page 851.
851. And there we are. No, mine, that's Akdamut. I'm in a different current. Oh well.
Okay.
But
Well,
I
Akdamut is
also
good
love the
too.
fact that it's the same nusach as Ne'ilah.
Yeah.
And that conveys, because I'm not a musical person, really not a musical person. I've always been like a little bit skeptical about, well, the music of the synagogue means this or that, but this one, it really works for me. And if you remember that it's Ne'ilah, then you call it to mind now. It confers a lot of power.
Well, I got two moments for Shmini Atzeret Haftarah. I love the Haftarah. It's a chazaka. I do the Haftarah every Shmini Atzeret. It's my senior sermon. Parasha, been doing it now for I guess 30-something years, which is a lot. The dedication of the temple, which I think is one of the great moments of Tanakh, really the high point in Solomon's reign. There's so much going on in that particular text, such a beautifully written, beautifully told, beautifully, it's got a lot of great music in it. Very emotional. It's an emotional, personally, it's an emotional moment in the history of biblical Israel, and we're touching that moment at the key moment, at the climax of the whole holiday season. So that for me is very, very precious. And Yizkor on Shmini Atzeret is a different Yizkor. I think Yizkor on the last day of Pesach is a different Yizkor. The Yizkors are very special moments, personally, obviously, and in the community. I'm in the middle of, thinking about remarks for Yizkor and thinking about, just what it means. You are reciting names, you're thinking about people, you're in community, and that idea that you're going to be there with everyone and think about people just, for a fleeting moment is very, very powerful. And in some way it says, here you are with me as the holiday concludes. At these precious moments, this precious moment of communal life, we want to hang on to people who are important to us personally. My whole thinking is, what's the difference between the kind of experience that we have at Yizkor versus the kind of experience we have when we visit the cemetery? visit of cemetery is a personal experience. The Yizkor experience is really a collective experience, and there's a whole set of contrast between those two. And I just feel, since, of course, Yizkor does motivate a lot of people to come to shul for all sorts of reasons, and we can't, we love them coming for any reason, and it's even to feel the sense of connectedness. But I'm always stunned that the minute Yizkor's over, a lot of people head for the exits. You can stay up just a little bit longer. But
Well, have you ever asked those people what they actually get out of Yizkor?
no, and it's not something that I could stop the service and say, would you like to share? But I think it's worth a conversation.
So what I find interesting, I go to this small Orthodox shul, and Yizkor is kind of perfunctory.
Yeah.
And I noticed this year on Yom Kippur, we didn't even have a minyan of mourners. Actually, we only had 15 for all of Yom Kippur, so thank God 10 of them had parents. And I often wonder, about that idea. In some synagogues I've gone to, they've moved Yizkor around to try to stanch the flow of people. Like in one shul I belong to, they would do Yizkor on Yom Kippur in the afternoon.
Right.
So people would come back for mincha, which I never particularly liked, because I think it's better when the Torah is up. But be that as it may, I sometimes wonder if we don't miss an opportunity by finding and really discussing with people what is the draw of Yizkor for them, because I imagine most of them don't understand the Hebrew that they're reading. So where are they getting their
So my
spiritual
hunch is
nourishment from?
that people have an obligation, and they feel that sense of obligation to their dead, and to they need to express that within the communal sphere.
Right, but what I'm suggesting is where there's a real rabbinic role is putting that into words, because that's what rabbis do. They put things into words.
They put things into words, but it's if you say to people you have an obligation and you're coming because you feel guilt or a sense of shame, it's
Maybe that doesn't work quite so
I so before I mean, it's obviously been a great many years now, but more years than I care to count that I've been working as a rabbi on the high holidays, but and 23 years here in this shul. But before that, and still today, I'm 57. I have two living parents. Have not had first degree losses, lost grandparents, an uncle, but at 57, I'm well behind the curve about personal
and you
loss.
should stay that way.
And so before I went to work as a rabbi, I was never even in the room for Yizkor. I always went out. So I had very, very little
Direct connection.
I had no real experience of what this is, and having to frame it for people, lead people through an experience that is it remains a little bit alien to me. It's interesting for me to hear you say that, Elliot, about the difference between the kind of a private or a communal. It is true that we do this communally, but the things that I tend to say tend to be about encouraging people to summon up very personal memories. And I tend not to, and I'm by no means think that, oh, this is how we should do it. I mean, maybe I should do it the other way. Maybe I should think about stressing communality, but I always feel like I set something up and then I let them go do it, even though I'm not quite doing it myself.
It's all about emotion. I think, I mean, someone this week said to me, do you have a real tear-jerking sermon for Yizkor? And I don't think it's a tear-jerking. I feel the pressure now to have an emotional sermon. And I think people are looking for an emotional release. They do want to come and cry a little bit, aside from the fact that that's highly unpopular in a modern context to cry publicly.
Well, the observation I like to share is that Yisker is one of those things that your list of people only gets longer,
Sure.
but you never take people off your Yisker list. And I think that part of the power of Yisker is that it allows us to confront our own mortality by remembering our loved ones who have gone before us. And it gives us an intimation that one day someone is going to be saying Yisker for us.
I keep a list on my bulletin board of people that I want to remember. I was up to like 105, but that includes Jean Beliveau.
That's 2 weeks in a row we got a hockey player in there.
It includes a lot of relatives, members of the shul, and famous people. And I have to add this year a couple of people like Gordon Lightfoot, you know.
Do you actually say a paragraph for each of those people?
I don't say a paragraph. I go
So what I find funny in the Art Scroll Mahzor,
Yeah.
they mention for the El Mali Rachamim, which is traditionally comes after the Yisker paragraphs, that you could say El Mali in the group, but you should separate the men and the women. They just say it twice, which I
Okay.
always found kind of quaint.
All right. We could spend a lot of time talking about it. Let's move on to Shmini. We're actually
Simchat Torah.
Simchas Torah. Okay, Simchas Torah. You know, it's the only time that we get to read the Zot HaBracha completely. Okay, not that I want to go on the sad parts, but I find the Zot HaBracha so intensely moving. Okay, especially when we come to the end, and it's the moment that the Torah reports to us the death of Moses. Now, as I pull up the verse here, which is chapter 34 of the book of Deuteronomy, it says here that God showed Moses the entire land, and then it says God speaks to Moses, and this is the last word that God says to Moses: Zot haaretz. This is the land. So it's so powerful. The land,
right before him,
right? It's right before Zot haaretz asher nishpati. This is the land that I have sworn to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, to your seed I will give it to them. I have showed it to you in your eyes, v'shama lo tavor, and you're not going there. And then the next verse, vayamat sham Moshe, and Moses dies there. So, you know, musically, I want to have a long pause between the two verses and kind of sit there and meditate there and think about Moses having seen the land and experienced the vision of that, and then kind of, you know, imagining what's going to take place, and the death is unattended, it's alone, it's
well, it's not unattended. God is there.
God is attending. Okay, so but you know, unless you have God holding your hand, you know, nobody wants to die, you know, alone. Moses, at least Aaron had his brother around when he died. No.
So what I would focus on more is the mode of death, which is the kiss of death.
Okay, al pi Adonai, by the peh, by the mouth, by the word of, you know, according to the commandment, all that. Okay, and we don't pay enough attention to these moments in the course of the reading, because, you know, we're in this festive atmosphere. The Torah is ending, and it's really a confluence of very, very discordant emotions.
So what I find striking here is that we kind of rush the end of the book, and we go off in two separate directions.
Yes.
In the Haftarah, we begin the next section of the Tanakh, the Nevi'im, and in the Maftir, we begin the Torah again. So we don't actually end with the death of Moses. We end either with the entrance into the land, or the preparation for the actual entrance into the land in the Haftarah, or with a creation, which in the sense is a recreation of the world. And it sort of gives a different meaning to the death of Moses, because in the context of our liturgy, it's temporary.
The death of Moses then is conjoined to the life of Joshua and the creation of the world. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and it doesn't, you know, it doesn't end itself. It's not an end in and of itself.
Yes.
Well, this is like we're reminded of the fact that like Bible scholars say that they think that Devarim wasn't supposed to be the end of the 5 books of Moses, it was supposed to be the 5th of the 6 books of Joshua.
Sure.
And so that's partly there. And it is a joyful, wonderful thing that we complete the Torah, started all over again. Awesome. Ashrecha Yisrael. That's the last line in chapter 33, which is so great. And among the powerful parts of this, Ashrecha Yisrael mi kamocha. How fortunate you are, Israel. There's none like you. Amno Shab Adonai, Magen Ezrecha. Is a people rescued by God, who is your protecting shield. Vasher Cherev Ga'avatecha. Your sword is your pride. I think that's amazing. I think the uniqueness of Moses and the weeping for Moses. But I want to throw in one more sort of modern element about this that captures, I think, some of the stuff that Elliot was saying about the death of Moses. The grave of Rachel HaMishoreret, Rachel the poetess, her poem is Mineged, and it's about Moses looking across and never getting there. And it is etched on her grave in Kutzat Kinneret, just at the south tip of the Kinneret. The final of the 3 short stanzas. Haros kapayim ra'omi neged shama enba. Stretch out your hand and see it across. There, you're not going. Ish univolo. Everybody has his own nivo. Everyone has his own, being alone on that mountain, looking across al Eretz Rabbah, looking across the great water.
It's so powerful, and she what is she getting at there? What do you think she's saying?
I think it's and this is you noted that was the last statement of God to Moshe, and Shamalot Ta'avor, you will never arrive. The power of the divine statement to saying to the human being, as wonderful in the Bible's telling, as wonderful as a human being can possibly be, you will never arrive. Alachat kama v'kama, none of us will ever arrive. Every human being has the end of their life as looking across to the thing they won't reach. And that's ish univolo. Everybody's got their own har nivo. Everybody's got their own Moses being alone. And that's really heartbreaking.
Yeah. So in a sense, we have to start the Torah from the beginning again. And
because we would die of heartbreak if we didn't.
We would die of heartbreak. No, for sure. And this is why I think, and I've said this before on this podcast, Simchat Torah is really a holiday that's not exactly celebrating the Torah as much as it's celebrating the eternity of the Jewish people and its connection to the Torah. And I get this question all the time. Why do we start the Torah? Why don't we start the Torah reading cycle at Rosh Hashanah? Why do I have to wait till Simchat Torah? It's actually a good question. And this, intuitively you would think new year, no Torah reading, but the answer is it just doesn't work out that way. That's not a good answer. The answer is there's just so much squashed into the 2 weeks between. You have Sukkot and you have Rosh Hashanah and you have independent themes dealing with all of those things. But this is about the Jewish people connected to Torah on its eternal journey. And that's possibly why we don't get wrapped up in, the pathos of this moment, which is, it's very sad. It's heartbreaking. And that we linger maybe just a few milliseconds between the end of the Torah and the beginning again. I mean, it's such a tremulous moment and we can't live without Torah. We have to bring the second Torah up. We have to read it right away. I think it's a very, very powerful statement of continuity. We are not linear people in the sense that, we're going now into Joshua, although what a great thing it would be for people to read that. We're going back to the beginning because our lives are dependent on this, and our lives are dependent on retelling the story, the whole story again, anew, as we are ourselves renewed and as we are older. We're older. We have a little more insight. We have a little more wisdom, I think.
So the image here is not the circle of life, but a spiral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
because we come back from a different vantage point. Everything looks the same, but our perspective is a little different.
Yeah. So here we are. We're going from the end of Sukkot, Hoshana Rabbah, Shmini Atzeret, Simchas Torah, and then we're going to go to Shabbos Bereshit. But this is where we're going to end our time together. And we can't thank you enough, the people that are watching and listening to us. We love your comments. We love your reactions on any of the places that you react. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we will join you very soon for another edition of Parsha Talk. Bye-bye.
Shabbat shalom, Chag Sameach.